Alright, welcome back to How to Make Hero Concepts. Today we're going to be talking about the purpose of mech heroes. These are heroes that use mechs in order to fight for themselves. They have a basic form where they're given a basic weapon such as a pistol or a rifle, and they can use that, but their passive ability is to call a mech down or call a device that they use to give them an extra set of attacks, extra set of abilities to use instead of just their base weapon. So they only have their base weapon without their passive enabled. So today we're going to be talking about Celestia, roles buffer, playstyle mobility, so it's a mobility tank, and description of celebrity because she's a celebrity motorcyclist who uses her cyber cycle as her kind of mecha attack. It gives her a bubble shield of protection until it's destroyed. So as you can see, her primary is Cell Blaster. It is a pistol that is 25 in its magazine. Basically, she's equipped with this pistol Cell Blaster as her primary, and that is her only weapon that she can use outside of her mech form. However, when she uses her passive Call Cycle, when you do enough damage in basic form with the Cell Blaster, you're able to call your cycle. So if your cycle gets destroyed, then you have to do enough damage with your Cell Blaster primary in order to call another cycle so you can use it. The cycle basically acts as a mech, as you can see here. As you can see, with the mech characters, you have the cycle abilities, which are granted by the passive, and this is only in basic form. So you can't use this when you're in your cycle, but if you're without your cycle, without the mech, you can use these basic moves. This allows you to see what the mech passive gives characters by giving these parentheses here. Well, this basic is used for only your primary non-mech. Everything else, cycle, is granted by the passive mech, which is the cyber cycle. Alright, so what is granted in the base form? Well, you got your primary and light slide, which is just a basic slide maneuver, cooldown 6 seconds, usual for most mobility abilities. What is granted when you call down the cycle? So when you get into the cycle, first you get better mobility because the cyber cycle is faster. You're basically riding a motorcycle at that point. Side booster, basically jet boosts you in a direction. It's basically another mobility ability, but for your cycle instead of this light slide, which is for your basic non-cycle, non-mech. Side laser beams, basically on both sides of the handlebars, opens up 2 laser ports that shoot 2 laser beams in a direction that you are currently traveling on the cycle. Side turrets. Turrets take up less energy to use over time. So basically, you fire these side turrets on your motorcycle, on your cyber cycle. The turrets take up more energy over time. So the more you fire them in a row, the more energy they use up. So of course, if you decide to just, take your hands off the trigger and wait like a second or two, then they go back to using no energy. But they use up energy over time if you keep them held down. And then you have bolt chargers. 2 charge shots from each turret that do double damage. So basically, it's 2 double damage shots from your side turrets, and these are 8 seconds per bolt charge shots. So of course, as we said, in your primary with your passive, let's say your cycle gets blown up, you're basically left with just your primary and your light slide ability, your slide movement. But if you do have your cycle, then you can call it down, get into it, get extra mobility because you're riding a motorcycle, basically like a cyber motorcycle, and you get all these abilities. You get side booster, side laser, side turrets, and bolt chargers, all guaranteed from your cycle, which is basically just a substitute for a mech. And then your ultimate, Cyclonic Wheel. Launch both of your hover tires that explode on contact. So again, you need your cyber cycle to use your ultimate, but of course, it's very easy to get your cyber cycle because you just have to do enough damage in basic form to be able to call it down, and then you can launch your ultimate ability once you're in the pilot tent of your cyber cycle, which is basically like your mech. So that's a basic rundown of mech characters. Let's now go to the stat block and get our stat block over with, and we can come back to review what we've learned while also talking about her story. Now I want you to pay attention to this right here, the health block. So Celestia has 200 health in base form, but when she's in her mech, the cyber cycle gives her an extra 250 health. So basically, when she's in the cyber cycle, she has 450 health. So her combined health in the cyber cycle is 450. When the cyber cycle blows up, that 250 goes away and she's back down to her base form, which she only has 200 health. So that's a very important thing to notice. When there's a mech, you have to give them extra health when they're in a mech, or else it makes no sense to put them in a mech. Anyway, we go down to our basic horizontal stat block here. Celestia is our name. Description is celebrity. She is a celebrity cyclist. We'll get to her backstory and her story later. Playstyle is mobility. As we said, she's a mobility tank. Her primary, of course, is Cell Blaster. As we talked about, that is her primary ability. So it is a manual weapon because it's a gun. Most guns use projectiles, which are manual. And her passive is Call Cycle, as we said. She calls her mech-like motorcycle down for her to use. And it grants her health upon being used. And let's put her, I think it was just called Light Slide. Okay, so Light Slide is her basic ability. Light Slide is an ability that does not do damage. It's mobility only, so of course we're giving it the gray 4 ability. And then we have Side Booster, which is a cycle only, so you have to have your mech, or in this case your cycle. Your passive has to be enabled, which calls cycle. You get into it and you get all of these abilities. Side Booster is one of the abilities you get. Other is side lasers, side turrets, and bolt chargers. So side lasers, bolt chargers, and side turrets. So let's take a look at the damage to figure out what these are. Side turrets seem to be projectile based, side lasers seem to be laser beam attacks, and bolt chargers just do double damage. So your side turrets do double damage. Again, it's an ability. It's acting on your side turrets to empower their damage. Your side turrets are projectile based. They shoot projectiles. And your side lasers are laser attacks, which are beam attacks. Lasers are beam attacks, meaning that they're limited area attacks, giving them the green highlight for our code. And finally, cyclonic wheels. So let's see. Cyclonic wheels are limited area. They do explode, so they go through a limited area before exploding. You shoot them in a directional attack with both of them. You can shoot them both directions, any direction, same direction, doesn't matter, but they travel into ejection before exploding. And of course, let's see here. So your health was, of course, Celestia has base 200 health plus the 250 given by the mech. So when she's in mech form, she has 450 health, and base form, she has 200 health. Alright, so let's review what we've learned. So looking at Celestia's story, remember, celebrity motorcyclist, as I said before, has won 7 world championships while she's only 19. So when she was 12, she won a world championship, and she's won 7 in a row. Her cybercycle acts as a mech to give her, giving her full 360 degree protection, as well as extra attacks to use. So of course, like we talked about before, the cybercycle basically acts as a mech. You can see it right here in this sentence. And it gives it 360 protection. So with her cycle, she usually doesn't need her own security and loves to interact closely with her fans. I mean, her fans can come right up to the cycle because, I mean, she's protected by it. Won't let them attack her, and she can just be up close and personal with her fans. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. We talked about how mechs work, how the mech calling should be your passive ability so that your hero should always be able to recall the mech if it's been destroyed. They're in base form and have to use limited ability sets that you give them. You obviously want to give them a primary ability so they can still do damage to protect themselves, and you also want to give them something else for them to do. I gave them a Celestia mobility as her basic, and then they call in with their passive. I say it should be damage based, but it could be healing based if it's a healer that uses a mech. I don't know. Maybe you have a healer in mind that could use a mech. Anyway, it has to do enough damage, healing, anything to get that passive charge back up, and you can recall your mech, giving them all these other attacks. Cycle, 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 cycle. All of these specific mech attacks. Very important note, Light Slide is basic only, so they can't use the Light Slide while they're in cycle form. They can use Jet Booster, but can't use Light Slide. That's a base ability, non-mech only. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. Like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like it. I'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo!